Hey, welcome to my channel. Today's video is about the problem or the question of evil in the world. More importantly, it's about pain and suffering and evil in the world. So there are two sides to the question of evil in the world. There's an intellectual side and an emotional side. So first, let's discuss the intellectual side. The intellectual side itself has two categories: the moral evil and pain and suffering. So, moral evil is classified as murder, rape, and other intentional crimes. Pain and suffering is classified as disease, chronic physical illness, and natural disasters. Now, as a Christian, moral evil should strengthen our faith in God because without God, there are no objective morals, right? Without God, there's nothing to tell us what's right and what's wrong. There's no Ten Commandments, there are no Beatitudes, no Sermon on the Mount. The Old Covenant, the Mosaic Covenant, was 613 laws given to the Israelites. There's none of that. There's nothing to keep us on the straight and narrow, if you will. So without God as a moral reference point, we can't tell someone what they should or shouldn't do. So let me give you four reasons why God allows moral evil. First is free will. Free will allows for evil. It's a natural consequence of God allowing free will. This also answers the question of who made or created free will. Well, our free will created evil. Free will is our ability to decide whether or not to do something that's right or wrong. Two, love. So, in response to the first point, you might say, well, why doesn't God just get rid of free will, right? If our free will has created evil, why doesn't he just get rid of it and then there's no more evil in the world? Well, the counter argument to that is that without free will, there is no love. If God removes free will, then love is also removed. And love is the greatest good there is. Imagine what kind of world we would live in without love. Imagine if you could design your perfect guy or girl, right? They would love you no matter what because you created them, right? They would have to love you regardless of what you did. Um, they're perfect for you because you made them for you, but they never chose to love you or even care about you because they have no free will. So, would you feel loved, right? We choose to care and we choose to love. So, God allows moral evil to create the opportunity for love and all the good that comes from it. Three, God's glory. God judges moral evil, and this is a great thing. We want him to judge evil. When when we see or experience evil, we want to know that he will judge righteously and justly. Now, will he judge righteously and justly in that moment? He may or may not. I'm not the one to put that on him. I'm not the one to tell you that he will or won't in that particular situation or in that moment. But he will at the end, right? In Revelation 19 tells us that at the end he will raise all the dead who have never accepted him in their lives, and he will judge them. So he will judge. It's just a matter of time. In Genesis 4:10, Cain's blood cries out for justice after his brother Abel murders him, right? The Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out from the ground." And in most movies you watch, there's a good guy and a bad guy, right? The evil deeds of the bad guy allow the good guy to show his righteousness, right? These deeds and how he responds test the moral fabric and the faith of the good guy, right? He ultimately wins because he takes the moral high road. Now, how would we know the true nature of the good guy without the corruption of the bad guy, right? In the same way, when God allows evil, he brings goodness and righteousness when he judges. Point four is simply it's us, his creation and his children. If God decided to stop evil, he would have to destroy every single source of evil in existence. This would include us. We are evil. We are capable of small evil and great evil. And in order to stop evil in the world, we would have to be removed from it. So now let's address pain and suffering. So number one is lessons. Suffering leads to lessons that we learn. Character transformation and personal change can be achieved through suffering. There are countless stories of people whose lives were positively transformed because of suffering. My wife's former husband was diagnosed with brain cancer in 2003. And I've shared this story before, and I will continue to share it as long as it's relevant to the content that I'm teaching. So, 1.5, 2 years into his treatment, she founded a nonprofit organization that helps families battle this horrible disease. Um, the organization offers financial assistance, but having previously lived through the experience, she offers much more. She helps them navigate the complex web of the medical insurance industry, Social Security, and treatment networking. So she finds them hospitals, she finds them the best doctors, she finds them the institutes that she believes will address the specific cancer um, effectively. Um, so, more importantly, she offers comfort, right? She cries with them. She listens to their stories. She listens to their frustration. She offers empathy and sympathy, and she gives them a shoulder to cry on because it was her journey. She experienced it. She lived through it. She knows the pain. She knows the suffering. She knows the doubt. She knows all of it because she lived through it. So without her husband being diagnosed and ultimately dying of brain cancer, she wouldn't be able to offer any of this. So pain and suffering also humble us as they teach us these deep lessons. Now, obviously, in my wife's story and in a lot of other people's stories, um, their pain and suffering, the lessons that they learned from their pain and suffering weren't because they were doing something wrong, but sometimes we do things wrong, and we have to learn lessons through humility. So remember, though, that wherever you are in that situation, remember that the pain is temporary, but the lessons and the character change are permanent, right? So two, kind of leading down from that, two is discipline. So God will allow our lives to become painful or even uncomfortable in order to teach us lessons when we stray. It's not a direct punishment, but a nudge in the direction we're supposed to be walking. Three is punishment. We see throughout the Old Testament that God punishes rebellion. The book of Numbers contains several stories of the Israelites in rebellion against God while they wandered in the wilderness. In Numbers 13:31 through 33, we read the story of how Israel rebelled against God after refusing to retake the promised land when they left Egypt. God decreed that they would wander in the wilderness for 40 years and would not see the promised land again until the entire generation of men who fled Egypt died in the desert. He punished their unbelief and their bold lack of faith even after freeing them from 400 years of slavery. Four is the butterfly effect. Sometimes our pain is a result of someone else's actions. In the story above, God sent 12 spies into the promised land, and those 12 were afraid and faithless. Yet all were punished because of the faithlessness of a few men. Five is spiritual warfare or heavenly affairs. So the book of Job is the perfect example of this. Job suffered death, destruction, and physical pain because of spiritual warfare between God, the angels, and Satan. Throughout the story, Job continually asks God why this has befallen him. However, God doesn't give him a reason. Additionally, God reminds Job that he is God and that he doesn't have to justify himself or his actions to Job. And understand this as well. Job was a righteous man. Um, one verse says that this man was blameless and upright. He feared God and shunned evil. So Job was at that time the most righteous man in God's kingdom. Six, we just live in a fallen world, right? When we experience pain, it tells us that something is wrong with our world, right? When we see this in the world, we recognize it and we call out and lean on God because we are a broken and fallen people. So, for those who are wrestling with suffering, this is what we know. Creation was not always this way and won't always be this way. Free will must involve evil, but suffering is both temporary and useful. We must also understand that God limits suffering and pain. In my younger years, I was involved in risky behaviors and recall several situations which should have resulted in my death. I also narrowly avoided situations um, that would most certainly have caused pain and suffering. And you know, that's this is what I don't know. I don't know why individual situations happen. I don't know why children get cancer. I don't know why your house was destroyed by a tornado, but your neighbor's wasn't. I don't know why you suffer from chronic illnesses. How would I know this? How could I answer this question? How arrogant would I be to assume I know and offer you a reason? So God's plan is not obvious to anyone. However, isn't it equally arrogant to assume that God is doing nothing with your pain? Life is so complicated and we just don't know why these things happen. So I'm going to conclude this piece with a verse from Revelation. And while this verse deals with the end times directly, I believe it has significance here. So Revelation 24, 6 through 7.